about some of the reasons that we might need to use Topogun to create new topology for our meshes. So these days, a lot of the models that we create, especially characters and creatures, are built and sculpted at a very high resolution using applications like ZBrush or Mudbox. Now, these programs allow us to get very detailed results using methods that more closely mimic traditional workflows. Now, depending on how the original model was created, the underlying polygon structure or topology of the model may or may not lend itself to the sculpted detail. For instance, if we take a look at this alien head and we turn on our polyframe, you can see that the way this mesh was created, we've got very high resolution polygons coming in here, and they don't necessarily match exactly to the wrinkles. So you can see we've got eyes here, but we don't have the traditional loops going around the eyes that you would expect when you're doing an animation. Same thing around the mouth. Okay, it's a very dense mesh, and even when I dial it down, you can see it was built using Dynamesh. And so the topology, and you can see how it's trying to match the detail here, but it's not optimized. So you can see we have the nose coming up, we have the eyes. We don't have that optimized geometry that really helps get all of the sculpted detail with the minimum amount of polygons. So you see if we have wrinkles coming up this way, if we were to actually create our topology, the underlying structure going in that direction, then we're not wasting any polygons. We don't have to subdivide it to a really, really high level in order to get that sort of detail. Okay, so a lot of the base meshes that you might create in ZBrush, for instance, with Z-spheres, if you're doing it that way, you're going to have geometry coming across the face like this and then across the face like that. When you try to get all of this detail in here, sometimes you'll be fighting against the topology because you're trying to sculpt at an angle when your polygons are dividing straight up and down. So you have to subdivide to a very high level. So creating new topology in those cases will really help you as you subdivide, is subdividing in the correct direction, and then you're sculpting, you can sculpt at a much lower level and everything is reflected accordingly. Okay, so that's kind of one reason to recreate topology, to actually, you work out a base here in your sculpting application, rework the topology, and then bring it back in as your lower level. You can keep some of that sculpted detail, and then when you subdivide, you get really efficient use of your polygons as you go up and down the subdivision levels and start sculpting. Okay, so that's one reason that we might need to change our topology. Another reason would be if we go in here and take a look at this biker character. So let's say we were creating a sort of game character, and we come in here, we create a really detailed character that we like. The problem with this is that it's really, really high resolution. The concepts that we, or the results that we get doing this can be great for concept work and illustration, but the polygon count of these meshes are really too high to be able to rig and animate and integrate them into a game engine. So you can see we've got 14 million polygons that spread over a number of different subtools. You see all of these different subtools here, each with, could be thousands or millions of polygons. And so we end up with what is, maybe matches our artwork and what we're trying to get look-wise, but the number of polygons is just too high to be able to use efficiently in any application. So in this case, we want to actually create topology over the top of this that will actually encompass this whole thing, that will allow us to make maps out to recreate this detail. So rather than serving as a new sculpting base, this is something where we're actually creating the geometry itself that's going to be integrated into the game engine or just rigged and animated. So looking at this guy, if we now just look in Topogun here, you can see that we've got him loaded up as a reference. And so what we can do is actually just create topology directly over the top of it. Okay, so whereas in ZBrush we had all of these separate subtools, here we're just creating this new geometry on top of it, and it's constrained to the shape so that we're able to get the exact shape and look that we had before. You see if I turn off the reference, you get something that is a lot more low resolution. You can see we've got 6,300 triangles versus 15 million points, so it's a much lower resolution. Okay, and so when you take this into something like Maya, once you've kind of baked the normal maps, it can get all of that detail out, as well as the color maps and a number of these other maps that we can generate here, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But once we take that into Maya, you can see that you can really get the same look that we had in ZBrush, but now we're working with 6,000 or so triangles that we can very easily rig and animate and put into our game engine. And so we can get the same look that we had with the model in ZBrush, but now we can actually move it around, make it animate, make it work within its environment. Okay, and so making these sort of lower res models that are still able to get all of the detail, or at least a lot of the detail in here, using maps that we can generate in Topogun is a really important aspect of what we're doing here as far as creating new topology. You can see here it works the same with the shotgun here. If I look into, go into Topogun, and let's load up a new scene here. And I'll just load up the shotgun. These are all going to be with your project files if you want to check those out, but we're really just looking at them for as an example here. And so by taking a look at this, you can see that, again, this is made of a number of pieces. This wasn't made in ZBrush, this was just made in Maya, but still, it's made of a number of really smooth pieces, really high resolution pieces. You can see there's a number of pieces associated with it. But again, you can come in, create topology over the top of it, and now we've got 1,200 triangles, and that's it. So we can actually use this low resolution piece. And again, looking at it here in Maya, this is the same piece, and we can do the UV map. We can project or bake all of the normal map and the color map out to be able to reproduce what we've created in high resolution form, reproduce that in a low resolution form. Okay, so just to reiterate, the topology is sort of the underlying structure, polygon structure of the model, and we can create new topology because we need to continue sculpting. In the case of our ZBrush alien head, let's say we wanted to get more detail in our polygon direction, the way it's flowing isn't optimal for the detail that we're actually sculpting, and so we can redraw that topology in Topogun, bring it back in, and continue sculpting, and now it's all optimized. And the other reason that we talked about for creating new topology would be to take something that's very high resolution, for instance a character, and really optimize that and create a sort of low resolution or lower resolution cage around it that we can then create maps for, to get all of the detail that we had in our 15 million point model here, try to get as much of that detail as we can in our game ready model that is 6,000 triangles. So really a method of optimization. Okay, so hopefully you have a much better idea now, if you're not familiar with the concept of kind of redrawing topology or retopologizing. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you as far as why we would need to do that. So in the next lesson, let's go ahead and take a look at the interface of Topogun, which is a really